When Ezekiel saw this new employee so intimate with Estrella, a pony mare from the farm, he became vigilant. With a keen protective instinct, he knew that something wrong was about to happen. One fall morning, he entered the stable and saw that the pony mare had given birth. He turned pale at what he saw. But how? What is that? Ezekiel asked himself. I should have known that Estrella had been pregnant, and I've never really seen a case like this. Ezekiel wondered what that new employee had done to Estrella, but what he discovered astonished everyone on the farm. On a chilly fall morning on Solitude Farm, located in the vast northern fields, Ezekiel, a 58-year-old farmer, woke up before the sun had even risen. The cold morning air made little clouds of steam form with his every breath as he prepared for another day's work. Ezekiel, a robust man with calloused hands and a look that carried stories of a life dedicated to the land, had an unchanging routine and a passion for his animals. That morning, as he walked towards the stable, something seemed different. The gentle breeze through the trees carried a whisper of change. Ezekiel, known for his almost mystical connection with nature, felt a restlessness in the air. His destination was the stall of Estrella, a pony mare who was at the end of her pregnancy. Normally, Estrella would welcome him with soft neighs, but today, silence dominated the stable. With the lamp swinging in his hand and casting dancing shadows on the wooden walls, Ezekiel approached slowly. "Good morning, Star. How are we today?" murmured Ezekiel, his voice breaking the silence as he peered into the stall. Estrella was lying down, something unusual for dawn. Her behavior was strange, and Ezekiel couldn't help feeling that something was out of place. When he examined Estrella more closely, there were no signs of childbirth, and this reassured him momentarily. However, the mare neighed weakly, looking at Ezekiel with large, expressive eyes that seemed to be hiding a secret. "It's all right, girl." He stroked Estrella's muzzle, trying to comfort her, but his mind was full of doubts. As the day wore on, Ezekiel couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. Over breakfast with the other farm workers, he heard about a new employee recently hired by his boss, Mr. Damião. The young man called Rodrigo seemed strangely interested in Estrella, something that immediately aroused Ezekiel's suspicion. Rodrigo, the new boy, has been asking a lot of questions about Estrella. He says he likes animals, but I don't know. I've never seen someone so curious about a mare, commented Jonas, another farmer, as he chewed his bread. Ezekiel felt a twinge of concern. He knew every inch of that land and every breath of the animals that inhabited it. The thought of a stranger with unknown intentions prowling around Estrella didn't leave his mind. "I'll keep an eye on him," replied Ezekiel, his voice filled with grim determination. The peace of the farm and Estrella's well-being were in his hands, and he would do everything in his power to protect them. With this thought fixed in his mind, Ezekiel decided that he would keep a discreet watch on Rodrigo over the next few days. What he didn't yet know was that the real mystery and surprise that awaited him would be far more complex and disturbing than any suspicions he might have about the new employee. In the days that followed, Ezekiel kept a discreet eye on Rodrigo, the new employee at the Solitude Farm. Whenever he could, he watched from afar, noticing the boy's every interaction with the animals, especially with Estrella, the pony mare. Rodrigo, for his part, seemed genuinely caring and affectionate with the animals, which only added to Ezekiel's feelings. It was a cloudy Wednesday afternoon when Ezekiel decided to follow Rodrigo to the stable. Hiding behind the door, he watched as Rodrigo spoke softly to Estrella, stroking her mane with an intimacy that surprised Ezekiel. "You're special, Estrella. I feel you understand more than you show," Rodrigo murmured, looking into the mare's eyes. Ezekiel frowned, his discomfort growing. The words sounded innocent, but there was something in them that Ezekiel couldn't decipher. After Rodrigo left, Ezekiel entered the stable and walked over to Estrella. The mare neighed softly when she saw him, as if sharing a secret known only to her. "What's going on here, my old friend?" asked Ezekiel, worried. He examined Estrella, looking for signs of discomfort or illness, but found only the usual serenity in her eyes. The next morning, Ezekiel was woken up by Jonah, who knocked on his door urgently. "Ezekiel, you need to see this. It's the star. Something incredible has happened," exclaimed Jonas, panting. Running to the stable, Ezekiel felt his heart pounding in his chest. When he arrived, he saw Estrella lying on the straw, and next to her, something that made his world stop. A little newborn pony. But how? She wasn't pregnant. "I would have known," murmured Ezekiel, completely stunned. The little pony was covered in the same golden blanket as Estrella, its wobbly legs trying to stand up under its mother's watchful eye. "I told you she was strange. But this is a miracle, Ezekiel. A miracle!" Jonas laughed, amazed at the scene. Ezekiel, however, felt a mixture of joy and deep confusion. How could he have failed to notice Estrella's pregnancy? Did Rodrigo know anything about it? His mind was full of unanswered questions. Determined to get some clarification, Ezekiel approached Rodrigo later that day, with the intention of confronting him about his previous knowledge of Estrella. "Rodrigo, did you know that Estrella was pregnant?" asked Ezekiel, trying to keep his voice neutral. Rodrigo, taken by surprise, hesitated before answering. "No, sir. I didn't really know. I just felt that she was special, that's all," he replied, clearly uncomfortable under Ezekiel's scrutiny. Unsure whether or not to believe Rodrigo, Ezekiel decided to keep his suspicions quiet for the time being. As he walked away, a thought plagued him. If Rodrigo wasn't involved, then what had really happened? Ezekiel didn't know that the real shock was yet to come, and that the mysteries of Estrella were only just beginning to unfold. The discovery of the little pony had brought an air of mystery and magic to Solitude Farm. Ezekiel, despite his initial misgivings, couldn't help but be charmed by the fragile pony with its clumsy legs and sparkling eyes. However, the mystery of how Estrella, who didn't look pregnant, had given birth, remained a shadow hanging over his joy. Over the next few days, Ezekiel observed Rodrigo's behavior with even more caution. Although the young keeper showed nothing but dedication and affection towards all the animals, the voice in Ezekiel's head kept whispering that there was something else in the depths of that seemingly miraculous situation. A week after the pony's birth, while Ezekiel was making his morning rounds of the stable, he noticed something that made his heart freeze. Estrella, now recovered and active, was neighing contentedly while the little pony played beside her. However, in a far corner of the stall, something was moving under a pile of hay. With his heart weighed down by a dark foreboding, Ezekiel approached and carefully moved the hay aside. To his complete surprise, a tiny, trembling figure was revealed. Another pony, this one even smaller and obviously weak. The sight of the second foal, so fragile and hidden, aroused a whirlwind of emotions in Ezekiel. Too young, but how? He muttered, confused and now worried about the health of the newly discovered pony. Determined to understand the situation, Ezekiel carried the weak little pony to the farmhouse, where he could look after it more resourcefully. As he prepared a soft, warm bed for the animal, his mind worked frantically. He knew that ponies, like other equines, rarely had twins due to the complications associated with such pregnancies. All this only added to the unanswered questions. After stabilizing the little pony, Ezekiel called a meeting with Mr. Damião, the boss, and Rodrigo. In the office, with the window showing a view of the farm's green expanse, Ezekiel laid out his discovery and his concerns. "Mr. Damião, I found a second pony, hidden in the stall. I don't understand how Estrella could have given birth to twins without us noticing her advanced pregnancy. Not only that, but how did one of them end up hidden under the hay? Ezekiel looked at Rodrigo, searching for any sign of recognition or guilt. Rodrigo, for his part, seemed as surprised as they were by the news. I swear, I didn't know anything about it. Estrella has always been kind to me, but I never noticed any sign that she was expecting twins. This is rare and complicated, as you know, he replied, his voice firm, but his eyes revealing a restlessness. Mr. Damião, a man of few words, scratched his chin thoughtfully. Ezekiel, this is very strange indeed. I'll call the vet to examine both the ponies and Estrella. As for you, Rodrigo, carry on with your work, but stay alert. Ezekiel, keep me informed of any news. As Rodrigo left the office, Ezekiel's suspicion remained. But with the new information, he also began to consider other possibilities. What if there was something more natural, yet extraordinary happening to Estrella? Or worse, what if someone had intentionally hidden the second pony? These questions swirled around Ezekiel's mind as he waited for the vet to arrive, unaware that the true origin of this unusual situation was about to be revealed in an even more surprising and complicated way. With the mystery of the twin ponies weighing heavily on his mind, Ezekiel couldn't concentrate on his daily farm chores. The wait for the vet seemed endless, and every moment of silence was filled with increasingly complex theories about what could have happened in that stall. Finally, Dr. Silveira, an experienced veterinarian with many years of service in the region, arrived at the farm. Ezekiel immediately led him to the stable, where the small, weaker pony was being kept under heat and intensive care. Dr. Silveira, I've never seen anything like this. Estrella gave birth to twins and one of them was hidden. How is this possible without us noticing? Ezekiel expressed his concern as they watched the vet meticulously examine the cubs. Ezekiel, it's extremely rare but not impossible. I'm going to do some more detailed examinations, but their health seems reasonable, given the context. What worries me is how one of the cubs ended up hidden under the hay. That suggests human intervention. Dr. Silveira spoke with a calmness that contrasted with the storm of emotions inside Ezekiel. After the examinations, as they walked back to the farmhouse to discuss the next steps, Ezekiel decided to confront Rodrigo again, this time with Mr. Damião present. They met in the office where the air was charged with the tension of the situation. Rodrigo, I need you to be honest with us. Are you sure you didn't know about the puppies? Ezekiel asked, staring intensely at the young keeper. Rodrigo, visibly nervous under such scrutiny, hesitated before answering. I really didn't know about the puppies, sir. I just looked after Estrella like I do the other animals. Please believe me. Mr. Damião, always a man of few words, intervened. If we find out that you're lying, there will be consequences, Rodrigo. But for now, we will continue to investigate all possibilities. Dissatisfied, but without concrete evidence to completely doubt Rodrigo, Ezekiel concentrated on collaborating with Dr. Silveira to ensure the pony's well-being. However, his mind wouldn't rest, and he decided to carry out his own parallel investigation. Over the next few days, Ezekiel began to observe all the workers on the farm more closely, looking for any sign or behavior that might explain what had happened. He also reviewed the security cameras that covered the outside of the stable, a precaution that Mr. Damião had installed years ago. It was late at night when Ezekiel, reviewing the camera recordings, saw something that captured his attention. A hooded figure had approached the stable the night before Estrella's birth. Although the image was grainy and the face was hidden, the stature and gait seemed familiar. Ezekiel felt his heart racing. He had a new suspect in mind, someone he had never considered before. Armed with this new information, he knew that the next morning would bring confrontations that could change life on Solitude Farm forever. The truth was close to being revealed, and Ezekiel was determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, whatever the cost. The next morning, armed with the suspicion reinforced by the images from the cameras, Ezekiel decided to confront the person he now believed was involved in the mystery of the twin ponies. The caretaker Antonio, a man who had worked on the farm for years and whose stature matched the figure on the recordings. Antonio was called into the office where Ezekiel and Mr. Damião were waiting. Without beating about the bush, Ezekiel showed Antonio the recording, watching his every reaction. "Antonio, can you explain to me what you were doing near the stable that night?" Ezekiel asked, his voice firm. Visibly nervous, Antonio looked down at his feet before answering. I was just checking on the animals, as I always do." "At night and in a hoodie?" Ezekiel pressed, unconvinced. Finally, Antonio sighed, his posture defeated. "It's all right. I knew about the twins. Estrella was in labor and I helped. The second baby was born weak, and I hid it because I thought it wouldn't survive. I didn't want to worry everyone with it." Ezekiel and Mr. Damião exchanged surprised glances. Despite his confession, Antonio's sincerity and his obvious concern for the animals softened the tension of the moment. Ezekiel, although relieved to finally understand what had happened, knew that he still had to resolve the situation. He decided that Antonio should continue to look after Estrella and the chicks under closer supervision, acknowledging the caretaker's dedication despite his error of judgment. "Antonio, your heart was in the right place, but you can't make these decisions alone. We're going to monitor Estrella and the cubs more closely now," declared Ezekiel, offering the caretaker a second chance. Grateful for the opportunity for redemption, Antonio agreed, promising transparency in the future. With trust restored, the farm routine resumed. Now with the happy addition of looking after the young ponies who quickly became the joy of the farm. With the mystery solved and the ponies growing up healthy, Solitude Farm experienced a renaissance. Ezekiel, feeling more connected than ever to the animals and people on the farm, reflected on the events. "Sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction, huh?" he commented to Mr. Damião, as they watched Estrella playing with her cubs in the field.